Hello friends, today's real Christmas story was sent to me by Peter and written by his cousin Janet. A Christmas story that lasted a lifetime, a true story about a prairie family circa 1928. Christmas was fast approaching and Ada Winter puzzled over how to make Christmas special for her 4 children. She sat at the kitchen table in her Saskatchewan farmhouse long after the children were in bed, their toes curling around hot rocks, swathed in cotton bags and placed at the foot of their beds for warmth. The children had been paging through the Eaton's catalog for months, but the contents were too familiar. She hoped for a surprise this Christmas, but with her meager savings, she needed a miracle. Wind swirled around the house and snow hissed against the window as she turned up the wick on the coal oil lamp and put pen to paper. She composed a letter to someone she didn't know in a place very far away. To the manager, F.W. Woolworth and Company 5 and Dime Store, downtown Manhattan, New York City, New York. My dear sir, I'm writing to you from the Canadian prairies. We are 250 miles from the nearest city, so it is difficult to obtain Christmas gifts for my 4 children. Please have your mail order department select some small items appropriate to the ages of my children. 3 boys, ages 14, 8, and 3, and a girl aged 11. Enclosed is $5. It will mean a great deal to me to surprise my children this Christmas. Thank you for your kindness. Sincerely, Mrs. Ada J. Winter. She slipped the letter into the envelope and prayed for her request and the safety of her letter. The letter was mailed from their local post office in Alsace, Saskatchewan. Weeks went by and finally Christmas Eve arrived and she still had no reply. Ada was dismayed and berated herself for being so foolhardy. However, she determined to make Christmas a happy time in spite of her disappointment. The children hung their stockings on the backs of kitchen chairs in the absence of a fireplace, and the family gathered for a carol sing ending with "O Little Town of Bethlehem," her favorite carol. Later, when the children were in bed and her husband was dozing in his chair, she stuffed the stockings. First, an orange in the toe, a rare treat, nuts, hard candy, a homemade toy, and a book. Always a book, for Ava was an avid reader and was known in their community as the Book Lady. Christmas Day came and went, and Ada felt thankful that the family was happy, healthy, and fed. All thoughts of her letter, gone astray, were put out of her mind until a bright sunny day some weeks later, when her husband Percy and their eldest son Ken went to town to get coal. Returning with the horse-drawn sledge, they came trudging through deep snow to the house and opened the door of the back porch. They dumped an enormous parcel bearing the Woolworth label onto the floor. The excited family gathered around as paper was peeled back, revealing a letter on the top. Ada read aloud, "My dear Mrs. Winter, when my husband, Mr. Curtis, the manager of the Woolworth 5 and Dime, read your letter, he was impressed by the sincerity of your request and brought the letter home for me to read. Since we have no children of our own, I took great pleasure in selecting the gifts myself and hope they will be suitable. May God bless you this Christmas. Sincerely, Mrs. Curtis." As if in some fanciful dream, the children helped pull out one gift after another. Plaid Mackinaw coats with sheepskin linings for the boys, knives with bone handles, and a red velvet dress and soft slippers for Ailey, the only girl. How delighted they were to find whistles, a drum, other novelties, and candy, the likes of which they had never seen before. Percy exclaimed, "But I thought you sent $5. "Oh, I did," said Ada, "but it has been multiplied by the kindness of this lady who we don't even know." There is a sequel to this wonderful story which lives on in the memory of the Winter family. Ada wrote back to Mrs. Curtis and thanked her for her generosity and shared more about the children, the farm, and their community. Letters were exchanged frequently in coming months, and correspondence flourished between the sophisticated metropolitan housewife and the impoverished prairie farm wife. Both were articulate, intelligent women, and through letters they became lifelong friends. The next Christmas and for years to follow, parcels arrived from New York for Ada's family. Mrs. Curtis's interest extended to the neighbors and their children. She sent candy and gifts to be given out at the annual Wolf Willow School Christmas concert. Her generosity spanned decades. Years later, when Ailey's daughter Janet graduated from high school in 1963, Mrs. Curtis sent her a pearl pendant necklace. And when Ailey herself had graduated from Brandon College in 1936, Mrs. Curtis gifted the graduation dress. The two ladies eventually met briefly in 1949 when Ada passed through New York on her way to visit her daughter Ailey and her husband Cyril, who was employed as a veterinarian on a plantation in the Bahamas. Details of the story, as Ailey Winter Caldwell recalled them years later, were dictated to Janet, who wrote down the story and shared it with her own children and countless others at Christmas Eve church services, parties, and to her school students over many years. Written, Janet Martins, granddaughter of Ada Winter. Thank you so much, Peter, for sending this story, and our thanks, of course, to Janet for having written it. What a wonderful story, a real, true Christmas story from right here at home. Our real stories are just so beautiful and valuable, and I thank all of you for sharing them and all of you for watching them, and I will see you here tomorrow.